It's December of 2020, I'm 13 years old, and I've organised for my close mate Stephen to come around to my house to stay for the night. Now, our plans on this particular occasion weren't anything too special. We're going to set up the tent around the side of my house, ash up and listen to some music for the night as we always would. But as these stories typically go, that's not what ended up happening. So Stephen arrives to my house at around 4 p.m. We head up to my room straight away, and at first we're sort of just laying on my bed, scrolling on TikTok, you know, on Snapchat, that sort of thing. But I would say around half an hour into Stephen being at my house, I go onto Snapchat and start tapping through Snapchat stories, when all of a sudden, I come across a story from a guy who, for the sake of this story, we will call Will, selling loads of different stuff, half of which I had never heard of before. But there was one particular thing that he had for sale that caught my interest in particular. Now, just a quick disclaimer before I move forward with this story, I want to say I'm not glorifying or condoning any of the behaviours or activities mentioned in this video. I'm simply recounting a stupid thing that I did when I was younger in hopes that you can use my story to make better decisions for yourself. So as soon as I see this on Will's story, you know, I'm getting G'd the fuck up. And I say to Stephen, like, bro, do you want to get some of this tonight? And of course, being equally as curious, young and dumb, he says, yes. But that's when we're faced with our very first issue. We're 13 years old, so we can't exactly get jobs, which meant we didn't have any money because the only money I would ever make was from selling like a tiny bit of Udbays at school. So we think, all right, fuck, we just can't get it. But that's when I come up with a genius idea, or at least I thought it was a genius idea at the time. Looking back, it was dumb as dog shit. I remember that a couple weeks before, I had sold some Udbays to this Koori lad that I went to school with, and he had fully stitched me up, right? He gave me like this Chinese play money, but rolled up, it looked fully legit. It was like these $20 notes, had this like lettering on it. And so I proposed to Stephen that what we can do is we can organise to meet up with Will, get someone to drive us there, hand it out the window just like this Koori lad had done to me, and then speed off as soon as we've, you know, made the exchange. Foolproof, we thought. Of course, like I said, looking back, dumb as dog shit. And so I organised for one of my older mates to come and pick us up at around 6:30, 7-ish, and take us to the spot that we'd organised to meet Will. All right, so we get picked up, we drive just up the road. It was like 5 minutes away from my house. Of course, on the way there, I sort of run our older mate through what the plan is so that he knows, you know, make the exchange, speed off, everything's gonna be sweet. But upon arriving to the meetup spot, we see that it's not an actual address, right? He's just told us to meet him at this street. We assumed it was out the front of his house, but he wasn't on foot. A couple minutes after arriving, he pulls up in a car. So obviously it goes without saying our plan here was not gonna work, because as soon as he realizes the notes aren't legit, he's just gonna speed and, you know, chase after us, I would imagine. And so our older mate says to me, like, bro, you gotta come up with a plan quick. How about you just tell him you left the money at home? You know, you can't get it. What's cracking, my boy? I'll let you get back to the story in just a second, but first hit the fucking sub button, because every single one of you who are subscribed are literally the ones who make these videos possible every single day. Thank you so much. I'll let you get back to the story. So I get out the front passenger door. I walk around to Will's car and I say to him, hey bro, like, I've left the money at home. But that's when Will says to me, oh no, it's all good. You know, like, I'll swing by and grab the money tomorrow. Here you go. And he passes them out the window. Now in my mind, I'm just celebrating, thinking, you dumb fuck yes, you just got played. But I'm sort of like, I play it off, you know, say thank you, walk back around, jump in the car, and I say, he fucking gave it. Like, he just ticked it to me, boys. Like, let's fucking go. So we pull away, older mate drives us back home, get inside, have a bit of dinner. And that's when Stephen and I sort of just play the waiting game. You know, we don't want to do this stuff too early because obviously mum and dad are still awake. Don't want to get caught doing something as stupid as this. But I would say at around 8 o'clock, I'll say to Stephen, let's do them now. And then once it's, you know, taken its effect, we'll head out to the tent and we'll listen to some music. Everything will be all good. You know, mum and dad aren't going to come out, or so we thought. And we do them. After we've done them, we sort of just sit there anticipating, you know, maybe like an hour and a half, we'll be starting to elevate, but that thought could not have been more wrong. Around 20 minutes goes by and I'm sitting there, you know, scrolling on TikTok, just fucking around, when I hear Stephen say, bruh, holy fuck. And I say, what? Like, I thought he must have been reacting to a video. And he goes, this is fucking crazy. And he's sitting there like this. And I'm like, what? Bro, it's been like 20 minutes. What are you on about? It's like, it takes like an hour, hour and a half. What are you talking about? I get my phone out and I sort of take a photo with like the flash on like this, because when you do that, if they have, you know, taken effect, you're gonna have a set of dinner plates, you know, a set of high beams glaring into the camera. So he looks this way, I'm taking a photo with the flash, and sure enough, they've hit him. And I say, all right, let's go get some blankets and we'll go outside. Like, we'll go out to the tent, because if yours have hit, it's not long until I follow suit. So we turn the light on, walk down the hallway, open up the cupboard and start getting the blankets out. And it's in this moment that I sort of start to have this rising anxiety about my parents, you know, catching us, because they were in the lounge room, right? They turn their head 90 degrees, they're gonna see us in the cupboard getting blankets out, which obviously wouldn't have mattered. They wouldn't have known anything sus was up, but in my mind it did. So as we're getting the blankets out, I'm just trying to rush, get them as quickly as possible. But literally like 20 seconds into doing so, Stephen comes out with, bruh, it feels like I'm flying. And I say to him, shut up, my parents are right there. Like, I'm actually getting frustrated with him, because if we got caught, I don't even want to know what would have happened, all right? So Stephen shuts his mouth, we get the blankets and we quickly exit out the laundry door of my house. We walk out to the tent. As soon as we get into the tent, I would say like 10 minutes after, obviously everything starts taking effect for me as well. We put some music on, I'm really feeling the music. I say to Stephen, like, holy fuck, this is insane. This is not what I was expecting at all. Like, we're sitting there off in our own worlds, right? Of course, by this point, the high beams are very much in full effect, but it gets to around 10 to 9, so like 8:50 p.m. And my eldest brother, who I had told what we were getting up to on this particular night, comes out, you know, asking, you know, how you feeling, boys? And that's when Stephen, you know, pops his head out the tent. He jumps out the tent and he's like, bro, I fucking love you. You're the sickest ever. Like, bro, I fucking love you. You're a mad. Keeping in mind, he didn't even know my brother, right? They'd met like once or twice before. And of course, my eldest brother just starts cracking up. What else do you do in that situation? That's funny as fuck, right? So he's just standing there laughing at Stephen, you know, he's telling him he loves him. And he goes back inside. We get back in the tent and we're just sitting there, you know, taking stupid videos of ourselves, singing along to the, you know, hard style or like the party music that we were listening to. But as we're sitting there off in our own world, you know, music blaring, I hear a voice. So I say to Stephen, wait, turn the music down. I think I'm hearing things, but then I hear it again. Luke, mate, you forgot to squeegee the screen. It's my fucking dad. Right? And the second that he came out, I was literally talking to Stephen about how insane this experience is. But thankfully, to my knowledge, he didn't hear me over the music. But that was the least of my issues at the time. This meant that I had to go inside, into the light, with the high beams on, and squeegee the screen without anyone seeing me, because if they did, and they looked me in the eye, they would know something was up straight away, obviously. So Dad goes back inside, I get out of the tent, and I'm just trying to get inside as quickly as possible without anyone seeing me. You know, dry off the shower, get straight back out, because as soon as I was back outside, everything would be all sweet. I walk in the laundry door, the light's on, I'll go into the shower, dry off the screen literally as fast as I possibly could. For anyone wondering what squeegeeing it is literally just so that the glass doesn't get stained, you know, like wiping the water off. And as I'm doing it, my heart is just beating faster and faster. I'm like, holy fuck, bro, if mum or dad comes and says good night and, you know, is looking at me in the eye, they're gonna know something is up straight away. And I'm just stressing the fuck out. But by the grace of God, I managed to squeegee the screen, turn all the lights off, lock the laundry door behind me, and head back out to the tent. So I get back out to the tent and we decide to put on a very different style of music, you know, instead of just this doof hard style party shit. I think we put on like a bit of Pink Floyd, maybe some Australian rap. And as the night goes on, Stephen starts opening up to me about a few of the mental struggles that he's been facing over this past year, which I won't go too into detail here because it's not my place to do so, but that is relevant to later on in the story. It gets to around 10:30 p.m. and I have the idea to call my best mate Crocker and explain to him, you know, what we've been up to, because this was never planned. He didn't know we were doing it and he had no idea we had done it. So Stephen and I give him a ring, you know, we FaceTime him and we're like, bro, we just did like, this is fucking crazy. And immediately I can see that he's really sort of cut that he wasn't invited. He says, oh, how come you didn't invite me? And I say, oh, it was sort of like a last minute thing. Like we were just gonna ash up in the tent like we always do. But then, you know, I come across this guy named Will's story and I saw that he had this and one thing led to another. He goes, oh, what's it like? And you know, we start describing it to him. But as we're talking to him, I feel so fucking bad for not inviting him or for him not being there for this experience, that I decide we should meet up with him later on in the night so that, you know, I guess he can sort of be a part of it with us, if that makes sense. Right, so we come to the conclusion that we're gonna link up with Crocker in the suburb over where he lives and just walk around with him all night. So fast forward to around 12 a.m. Stephen and I decide it's a good time to leave my house, you know, sneak out and start walking to Crocker's suburb. So we slowly creep down my driveway, out the front gate and down the road. Right, so nothing really worth mentioning happens on the trip over to Crocker's suburb. I would say it took us like 20 minutes to travel the full 5 kilometers to him, given our state. But as soon as we arrive, Crocker starts ripping up, you know, he's punching a few cones, and we just start walking around the suburb, all of us being complete polar opposites. You know, Stephen and I, eyes glaring, and Crocker's eyes are basically shut at this point. But to give a conclusion as to how this night ended, Stephen and I decide to head home at around 3:30. Crocker does the same. Stephen and I get back to mine at around 4 a.m, go to sleep somehow, but I wake up at like 7 a.m. the next day, and to say I felt fucked would be an understatement. You know, I've got a throbbing headache, my jaw, my body is super sore, and I got the good end of the stick because Stephen felt so bad that after this, he made the decision to never do it again, which I'm gonna get to in a second. That's the whole purpose of this video. But over the course of the next year, I would say Crocker and I both did this probably 30 times, being conservative. And Stephen's reasoning for never wanting to do it again was the fact that the night after he had done it, he noticed his mental health getting worse and worse. Like I said, he already had pre-existing mental issues before going into this experience. But I remember one night in early January 2021, I'm staying at Stephen's house for the night, which is actually going to be what I talk about in my next video. And we're walking to this park to go and sort of ash up, right? And as we're walking there, he starts opening up about how fucked up his mental health's getting, you know, all the things he's been experiencing over this past year. And he's talking about how it's been amplified after what we had done in December, right? What this whole story's been about. And I'm sort of like comforting him, like I'm being a good friend. But I remember from this point, it seemed that Stephen's mental health was just on a complete decline, right? I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't want to out his business on here. But the common denominator here seems to be the experience he had on this particular night with me, which of course it makes sense, you know, it's an extreme psychiatric, but I sort of couldn't link 2 and 2 together at the time. You know, I just thought he was sort of having general struggles that most young men do. So I sort of just want this video to serve as, I guess, like a cautionary story to any young man or woman who's been considering doing this stuff, or maybe you see your peers doing this stuff and you know it's wrong, but perhaps the temptation is very strong like it was for me. I personally didn't see any issues with a lot of these things at the time. You know, I thought it was very normal because it is very normalized in today's society, you know, doing drugs, drinking alcohol, doing all the typical shit that somehow makes you look cool. And it's very easy to fall into that trap of, you know, doing those things, engaging in those things. And I feel like it's so obvious to say that drugs fuck you up and they're not good for you. But to many young people it isn't. And I get a lot of people in my comments even saying like, oh, you're a soft cock because you don't do this stuff anymore, or you were just a bitch, you couldn't handle it. But it's not that at all. For some people, you know, drugs have a very different effect on different people's brains. Some people can do it and not have any effects whatsoever. Others get super psychologically fucked up and that stays with them for life. Fortunately enough for me, that hasn't been the case. You know, I made those stupid decisions and upon stopping, I didn't end up, you know, fucked in the head or with any of these psychological problems, but I know a fair few people who have. They've had to go to rehab, they've had a lot of issues for the rest of their lives. And if you had told me back in December of 2020 when this whole story unfolded, that it would be the same 2.5 years later that would influence me to make hands down the dumbest decision of my life, you know, being a man half to death and getting in a long court case, you know, getting arrested and sentenced at 15 years old, I would have said like, shut up, you're full of shit, that's not gonna happen, you're just making stuff up so that I don't do it. And I feel like a lot of people who watch these videos, some do genuinely take things away from it, but others just think I'm bullshitting, I'm making stuff up, that it's just a scare tactic to try and convince you away from drugs. It's not that at all. I speak from real experience. I understand, like I say, some people do it, they never experience any of these negative psychological effects, but most do. Most make stupid decisions. I'm not saying don't enjoy yourself as a teenager. Don't be a fucking teenager, because that's exactly what you are. But do it in a responsible manner, because I know, at least for me, when I look back at my teenage years, the large majority of the memories which I deem to be good memories are ones that are me completely sober. You know, starting a fan page for my mate's legs in school, doing stupid shit in food tech, throwing eggs across the classroom. Just being a fuckwit at school, all right? It's a bit degenerate, but it's nowhere near as bad as engaging in all this dumb shit which feels good in the moment and just ends up fucking your life later on. It sounds so logical talking about it now, but I feel like to most young men and women it isn't. You know, you see it as a bit of fun, you get into it, you realise that it's not actually good for your mental health and it fucks you up in many ways, but it's harder to get out of it once you are in it. And I understand that firsthand. But with that said, bro, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you walk away with a fresh perspective, perhaps a bit of valuable insight. And before I wrap it up, I just want to say thank you to every single one of you who have subscribed. I've just had my absolute best month on YouTube, crazy amount of views, crazy amount of subscribers gained, and I owe it all to you guys. All the glory goes to God. I'm just super grateful for every single one of you, and I just thought I absolutely had to mention that, because it just does not feel real to be in the position I'm in. And like I said, I owe a lot of that to you guys. 74,000 subscribers. We're approaching 100,000. Let's try and get there before the end of the year. But with that said, I will see you in the next one. Hit the sub button so you can get to that 100K. Smash the fucking like. And as always, stay grounded, my G.